You heard this garbage from the stand-in Premier in Victoria who says we had no other choice than to go for lockdown of the entire state and tonight the entire city of Melbourne.
This is not a choice. We don't choose to go into lockdown. You know, there is no choice.
Yes, there is. You make the choice. I repeat, the Northern Beaches outbreak was twice as bad as what has been happening in Victoria, yet not even all of Sydney was locked down. It was just the Northern Beaches of Sydney. And as we have told you, despite all of the different claims here, this thing is not ripping through Melbourne. And it's not because of the lockdown. It's because, as I will show you yet again, scientists doubt this fundamental nonsense that there is something particularly different about this strain of coronavirus. Instead, you got the parroting of what we have now heard for the best part of 18 months. It's not our choice, it's not our fault, somebody else makes the decision to go into lockdown.
That's the advice from our public health team. So when we get advice from public health experts that you must go into lockdown and have a series of restrictions in order to run this to ground and ensure it doesn't escape and become uncontrollable, that is not a choice for government.
Yes, it is. Government can get advice, but advice is just advice. Do you like, by the way, he was double-checking the script? So when we talk about the public health advice that is being given to premiers, we're talking about idiots like the Nutty Professor in South Australia.
Of course, we're looking at the ball because sometimes the ball, not that I've been to many football games, I have noticed occasionally it does get kicked into the crowd, and we are working through the details of what that will mean. If you are at Adelaide Oval and the ball comes towards you, my advice to you is to duck and just do not touch that ball.
This was her attempting to clean up that self-owned mess.
I would just like to touch on the duck the ball issue because I'm sure you're going to ask me about it. And just to reiterate, I am not a football player, and in fact, whenever a ball comes towards me, whatever sort of ball, whether it's a basketball or a football, my inclination is to duck. Regardless of COVID, this ball has been touched by many sweaty men out there on the field. Just go and sanitise your hands before you start eating your chips.
Oh, dear goodness. That's the clean-up mess in aisle advice to government. Advice that we must follow, and that's why there's no choice about whether we have a lockdown. There's also advice that, remember, the Queensland government was getting about the Australian Capital Territory last year, that it had 0 COVID cases for more than 90 days, but still its citizens weren't allowed to come to Queensland to go to funerals because of this advice to government.
Canberra is defined as a hot spot because it's within the middle of New South Wales.
Oh, these people. Ultimate power. They're allowed to say whatever and governments just follow along. Sometimes it is okay to say no, to be proportional. Exactly what happened in New South Wales when, I repeat, there were double the number of cases on the Northern Beaches and they didn't lock down the entire state or the entire city, just the local government area. Whittlesea and northwest Melbourne is where the problem is. That's the only place that should be being locked down right now. But the advice coming into the Victorian government comes from old Bambi eyes.
So it's a more concerning, more contagious variant. It doesn't do magical things, but it is fair to say that we're seeing transmission through those fleeting exchanges, and maybe where the infectious case has left the space and another person has moved into it. That's concerning enough.
Okay, but the fleeting exchanges, how's this? There are apparently 6 examples of these fleeting exchanges where, very brief or a little bit of a delay between when the positive person was in a place and somebody else ended up catching the virus, there were about 6 cases that helped inform that bloke about the advice that he gave to government that they couldn't reject that led to lockdown. Well, guess what happened tonight? A third of the 6 cases, 2 of the 6 cases were misclassified. They never were because they were false positive cases. Yet this bloke keeps banging on that there was some sort of special Melbourne variant of the Indian strain of definitely not the China virus.
I have described it as an absolute beast because we have to run it down to the ground.
Now, if What I've been able to point out with facts, with figures, with the data hasn't been good enough. Doubts have been raised even in the Turnbull Times, and yes, even the impenetrable I Stand With Dan Channel 9 newspapers are finding scientists who find no evidence that the strain is a fast-moving beast. A fast-moving beast that apparently infected 4, because 2 of them were false positives. Now again, to underline that this is not a fast-moving beast, since lockdown started last Thursday night, there have been more than 344,000 people who have been tested for coronavirus, but only 37 people have ended up getting it. 20 of them in one local government area, Whittlesea, 7 of the 37 in the next door neighbouring council. That means just 0.01% of everyone who has had a COVID test, more than 344,000 in a week, has actually had it.